my strengths that I realized that helped create that whole world were I'm good at systems and I'm good at relationships with people. And I think the warning is that when you're in the same business with your beloved, whatever, is for you to retain your ability to as an adult, you think that you're done with all of that, or that you don't want to be that vulnerable in front of someone that you basically don't know, because I basically did not know him yet.
How did you overcome this divorce?
I think it's been a long process.
Becky Robbins, welcome to the Happy on the Inside podcast.
I'm happy to be here, and I love the name of your podcast, because we have to be happy on the inside first, right?
I totally agree with you. And I wanted to ask you this first question. What is actually being happy on the inside mean for you?
I think it means being true to myself. And I think that we are part of a big organization that encourages you to create like a declaration, or it's a document of who are you. And I think that has been really powerful for me to do that, because it's not an affirmation, as you know, and I spent a lot of time on that. And with some of the people that I'm mentoring, it's not easy, to go through that. But if you do it the right way, then you really know who you are on the inside, and then I can be true to myself on the inside, because I have something like a measuring stick to remind myself if I get even a little off track. And before we started, we were talking about painting, because I'm a painter and an artist, and I like to have the continuity of that, because the idea of creating something from nothing is it's miraculous to me. And I'm not a trained painter. I never even thought I wanted to be an artist. And so having the continuity is also the same thing with me. And that doesn't mean I'm always happy 1,000,000%. I mean, of course, there's life that happens. But if I go too far down a rabbit hole, and I'm the one who has to pull myself out of that. So I live by myself. So it's not like I can depend on someone to come and cheer me up. I have to keep myself in that place. But I love having that feeling that I'm in charge of my own happiness, and or contentment is another word, or whatever those words are. And I love to stay in that space as much as I can, because the rewards are so great.
I love how you said you are in charge of your own happiness or contentment, and you choose to stay happy.
Mm-hmm.
Becky, you talk about your document in many, many podcasts. For those people who don't know what is the document, I would love to hear your opinion. What is the document, and what is in Becky Robbins' document?
Well, I actually also created a similar document for the television show I'm working on. The document, I think the process of doing it makes it special. And it's a sort of a declaration of who you are, not an affirmation, because to me, those are kind of like something you wish you were, but you aren't yet. So my document, the only thing that is in my document that hasn't happened yet is a relationship, like a beloved, intimate, magnificent relationship. Everything else, and yet I've laid a great groundwork for it in my document. But everything else is something that I know to be true about myself from a divine perspective. And so the way that it was presented to me to do it by Steve Hardison was and I mentored with him for a year and a half or 2 years. And it was like that he calls it a warehouse. Like, you start writing down all the things that he calls it unuseful beliefs, but I think it's even more than that. It's more like, what are things that have created what you think about yourself, and what your shortcomings are, and things that have hurt you, and what are and that you keep dragging those things along with you in your life, and write it all down. And so my appointments with him were every 2 weeks, and I live in California and he lives in Arizona. So I flew there every 2 weeks. And in between that time was me writing all that down. And I remember one time, halfway through that, like, I'd read his book, and And I sent him a text message and I said, I'm so grateful, Steve, that I'd already heard about, read the book, and because I've already started writing some of the great stuff. It's saving me because this is so uncomfortable. And he immediately sent a text back to me saying, you're breaking our agreement. Like, whoa, what? And he said, because I told you to don't skip ahead. Don't skip ahead, try and bailing out of the process and for what's uncomfortable. You want to stick with the process so that you he said, we're going to fill up a warehouse with every unuseful listing, every negative belief, every awful thing, and then we're going to burn it all down. But you got to wait until that 2-week time. So I think if someone's going to start, and the people that I've been mentoring, you can't drag out that process. If they're like, oh, I haven't gotten quite done with it, I was like, come on, like you're making yourself miserable because you're staying in it. So then the middle part of the process is also extraordinarily important. And that middle part of the process is to forgive yourself. And I didn't quite understand that, but now that I've heard it said in a lot of different ways, to forgive yourself for judging yourself. But then it's sort of like forgive yourself for judging yourself. One way to say it is being the kind of person who could be incapable. That was one of mine. Like or unlovable, or no one took care of Becky. Becky has to take care of everybody else. Nobody takes care of Becky. I mean, all these things that I had written down. Forgive myself for judging myself as not worthy of being taken care of, or that I'm not capable of supporting myself financially, or that my art, I'm never going to get anywhere with my art, all kinds of things. And then those things, so that middle process, I cried a lot during that process because it was like, I think, you got at the point I am in my life and going through your life and all the decades of life and all the things that you've done and undone and all of that. And then to have to go back and face some of that stuff. I think as an adult, you think that you're done with all of that, or that you don't want to be that vulnerable in front of someone that you basically don't know, because I basically did not know him yet. But then the next thing that came out of there was, well, the truth is, I belong here. The truth is, I am made of God, and I create magic in every area of my life. And it just, once you've done those first two things, the rest just started to flow out of me. And a lot of it I created in front of him. It just flowed out, like he would say, because here was the unuseful thing. You've forgiven yourself, and the truth of you is, write it down. And I spent a lot of time. You know what else I did, Anna, is I love really good astrology, and I don't like look at a horoscope every day or anything, but what I loved about it, also the Nadi readers in India, with the palm leaf readers in India, is I looked back through some of those things about how did I arrive here on the planet? Like, what was I equipped with when I arrived here? And I wrote some of that stuff down too, and that shows up in my document, because I know that is, those things are who I am, like who I came here. My birthday was a few days ago, and it's like those great days of contemplation about who you are and what you arrived here with, and are you taking advantage of all of your gifts and all of that. So that's sort of how my document came to be.
Becky, this is so fascinating, because the book we are talking about, called The Ultimate Coach, written about Steve Hardison. And I read this book as well, and it shifted my whole being. And I wrote my document, my declaration about myself. And you're so right. Going through this process, probably the most hardest thing for me to face all those victim mentality, conversations that were happening in my head. And it's so powerful and so profound, because when I wrote my declaration, I wrote it on a big board and put right in front of me. And I was reading this every single morning. And it's not the manifestation, it's just reminding you who you are, because we were born divine and we can create magic. I love this. I love this.
I love that too.
Becky, just staying on this topic about Steve Hardison, what was the most profound, the most important lesson you've learned from him?
Anna, it's interesting because I think that we go through life and we discount ourselves a little bit, because, I mean, I don't have a big giant ego, pretty humble. And there was a story I told at an event recently about being in the cage with a tiger, and I was that whole tiger story. And I really was. I won't go into the whole story, but I really was in a cage with a real tiger, and it was behind me, and there was like this tiny little thin piece of cardboard behind me and the tiger was like snarling, and because there were lights and fire and screaming people and music really loud, and this tiger was in the cage, and the idea was that I would disappear, and then I would turn into a tiger, and then all of a sudden the lights would go onto the back of the room, and there would be Becky would be standing back there. So anyway, I was telling Steve this story about me being in the cage with the tiger, and he was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it was this tiger. So tiger's like bumping up against my back and snarling in my ear, and it smells horrible in there, and and then they throw this dark shroud over me, so now it's pitch black, and I have to carefully lift up this trap door with had a little ring in it. I had to lift that up and then lift up another one that was at the top of some stairs that I had to then, I'm pretty little, so I had to slide down into those stairs, and then those, but if I would have if that would have slipped out of my hand, that little ring, that activates the wall to come down, and that I would have been in the cage with the tiger, and nothing good would have come out of that. So I was telling Steve that story. I'm not even sure what the genesis of that story was for me to be telling him that. But at the end of the story, I said, so obviously Becky was disposable. And he said, hold on a minute. What did you say? And it's like, wow, that actually came out of my mouth, And when you ask me, like, what is like one of the most memorable things, is that he said a couple things to me like that. Like, how could you not know who you are? How could you not know what you created? And, I was more in a place of being a victim about that stuff. This was everything I created. It was amazing that I created something out of absolutely nothing. And, obviously it was a co-creation, but I was the responsible one for making everything work. And he reminded me of that frequently, that kind of a thing. Like, Becky, with zero Becky would be zero Tony. Zero Tony would be zero this, zero, like he kept on going, and he would remind me of that. And I think that's so important for us to remind ourselves of who we are, like who we are coming in, like what that is that is so powerful, that no two of us are alike. And here we are, 8+ billion of us. There's an intention for us to be here, like a powerful intention for us to be here. And how could we negate that at all? Mm-hmm. So that was probably the most important thing I got from Steve. Yeah.
This is so powerful, because when you remember who you are, there is nothing that can destroy you. There is nothing that can shake you or, break you down, because the source of power is coming from the inside, and you don't have to pretend anything. Right. That's so close to my heart, Becky, because for many, many years, I was literally pretending. I was wearing my mask, smiling on the outside, but getting destroyed on the inside with all the emotions of shame and guilt and pain and anger. Because I'm not sure if you've heard my story. I was sexually abused by my stepfather for 6 years.
I did not know that.
Resulted in 20 consecutive miscarriages. So once I found myself, once I realized that whatever I went through is now my source of power, my soul, I became unstoppable. And when you were talking about your story with a tiger, being a tiger, and you said, I had to disappear and become a tiger. Do you feel like you were becoming a tiger at this moment?
You know what? I did not then, I'll tell you, because then I was just, my only focus was to stay alive, to do everything properly. I had record-breaking time to do it. And I didn't even feel, honestly, I didn't feel victimized either. I didn't feel like, oh my God, like, why do I have to do this? I didn't feel that way. It was part of me having to do everything. So that was one of the things that I had to do. But I think that, what's so funny is that I told this story And I talked a bit about, which I think would be fun for us to talk, fun, but fascinating also, to talk about victims need villains. And that was what I was talking about when I was in England recently. And now I'm on to the next level of what happens after you let go of that. And what I mean, how living in the unknown is such an amazing thing to do, and really scary and hard. And yet I have to tell you, it was so funny because I got on an airplane after to come home, and I was looking through what are the movies on the plane. It's a long flight, back to the States. And I just noticed there was a movie on called The Life of Pi. Did you ever see that movie?
No.
Oh my gosh, please watch it. Everybody listening, watch the movie, The Life of Pi, P-I, like pi squared, and that. It's a story about an Indian boy whose family had a zoo in India. And then things got dicey in India, and they needed to move out of India, and they didn't know what to do with the animals. So they all got on board a big ocean liner, and the animals were in the hold of the boat. And there's a big story around it. Ends up that this young boy ends up in a lifeboat with a tiger. So I'm watching this right after I had just been telling the tiger story. And then I get home and I'm just chuckling to myself. And then I get home, and actually the painting behind me, I took a break from this painting because Steve asked me to paint a painting of my actual document, which was interesting to do. And I came back to this painting, and when I got home from England, this is sitting here, and there's a tiger, because 2 years ago was the year of the water tiger in Chinese medicine. And so I'd already painted a tiger into my painting. So interesting. There are tigers all around me now. And I love that, because I do feel like, wow, the essence of that call, you can be calm and call on your power when you need it. Like I'm not like walking through life like beating my chest and being, but I definitely know who I am. And I want to say something else that you mentioned about when you know who you are. How do you even figure out who you are? How do you figure out who you are when that's such a kind of a nebulous concept? But I think because you don't always know, you go through life and you go through circumstances, and you don't really, it's how you interpret them, right? It's how you interpret them. And I'm reading a book that I can't put it down. I've read it once and I'm going through it again. And now it's kind of there are several in succession to that. And it's called The Book of Mastery. And it's a channeled book by a guy named Paul Selig. And I love that book so much. I've gotten so much out of that book. And it's reminding you that I mean, if everything is either love or fear, that fear is a liar. And he goes on talking about fear is a liar because you've forgotten your divinity. If you've forgotten your divinity, then you can't know who you are, because you're made of that. And we're all completely different from one another. And yet we're living in the collective of all the turmoil and the beauty and the wonderfulness and the craziness and the horrible shit, and all of that all at the same time. So I had a wonderful, he's not on the planet any longer, but he said long ago, Becky, you're in God's school now, and good students get hard homework. And I was like, I don't know if I like that, but I think you're right. We're in God's school.
I just recently saw this quote. I can't remember by whom. It says, you don't know how powerful you are until you get into the situation when you have to be powerful. Something like that. And I've changed my relationship with fear, actually, Becky, because when I realized that the fear is not our enemy, it is our enemy when you don't know how to deal with that, but it's not. It's actually here. It's a biologically developed protection mechanism to keep us safe. And once you realize it, once you say, okay, thank you, fear, I can see what you're preventing me from doing, and it's a very natural emotion, because it was preventing our ancestors from eating poison berries or, hug the tiger or a bear.
Yeah, for sure.
I literally learned how to deal with my fear, and I take my fear with me and I go forward. And as you said, the unknown is the most beautiful and magic thing that can happen to you. And I developed trust. lots of trust in myself
Mm.
and in an unknown. It's like a knowledge, when you go for, and you just know that you're going to be fine. And I want to ask you this question, talking about fear of unknown and creating a magic in your life. How did you overcome this divorce? How did you overcome this fear of unknown? What were you feeling at those moments? And how did you come up on another side?
I think it's been a long process. It's been a long process. And I only recently feel like I've come out on the other side of it, truly. I felt like I was in exile. I felt like I was like alone, that all of a sudden I've been surrounded by thousands of people all the time. And now what do I do? And who am I? And what am I going to do now? And it was really, really hard. And all the people that had been my friends, like my whole life was the work, because we were working all the time. And so those were all, I didn't have time for a social life outside of that. So it was really hard. And one of the things that did help me was that I just had lunch with her yesterday, actually, was an attorney that I had, and she had to retire due to a health issue. And I ran into her one day at a little restaurant and asked her how she was doing and how she was faring. And she said, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking Spanish lessons, piano lessons, art lessons, guitar lessons, gardening, so I did everything that she said. I thought, okay, I'm going to do all of that. So I went with her to an art class one day, and literally it was like a beginner art class. We had a big piece of paper and a pencil. That was it. And they said, okay, draw a straight line. I mean, that was so elementary. So that was the beginning of that for me. And I've said many times, like, art has saved me. Like during that shutdown, I had my art, and I have my art all the time now. It's like really important to me. You talked about the unknown. In my document, I have a phrase that says, and I like to say, I'm made of God at the beginning of my document. And now sometimes I'll say I'm created as, and this phrase I love is wonderment and certainty in the as yet unknown. Because I think the unknown can be scary, but if you can be curious about it, like a sense of wonder, like, I wonder what could happen, and because everything's created out of nothing. I mean, that world that I was in, we created that out of absolutely nothing. There was no anything before. When I met Tony, he'd done one firewalk in somebody's backyard. That's it, for like 30 people or 15 people or something. So it started from nothing. And so it's, back to the how did I do it? I think that, can we talk about victims and villains for a minute?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, when I was in England, the book that I just mentioned just really helped me get in touch with the idea of being a victim, and even if it's justifiable, right? I mean, a lot of victims, look what you've been through. You're justified in feeling like a victim. Mm-hmm. And people all over the world feel justified in certain things that are going on right now and they're right. You're right. Like some of the hatred going on in the Middle East, you're right. That would be, but the generations that are going to come after you, at some point you have to let it go. And that was a real hard part for me. And I kept being told, like, Becky, on the other side of you letting go of the villain and being a victim, because victims need villains. So then you just keep creating another scenario and another scenario and another scenario. And then, ad infinitum, that you're now a victim of. And then other people are villains, and then the government's a villain, and then the taxes are a villain, and everything. It's like a really creepy place to be in, and scary, and feeling completely out of control. And I felt that way for a few months this year to a situation that happened, and I had to absolutely let that go. I had to let it go. And most people were saying, oh my God, you need to get a big bad attorney. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm letting all of this go so that I can have some peace of mind in my heart and freedom. And also remembering, I was denying my divinity. Even though I was reading all the books and doing all the meditation and all that, okay, but you're still feeling like someone's a villain and you're the victim of all of that. And I absolutely had to just say, I'm done. I'm letting it go. And also, like, I felt like I had a safety net, and there wasn't, and like the safety net was made of fear. And I literally, in my mind's eye, I thought about like those big garden shears and just like, okay, sort of like a cargo net underneath, it's like, okay, I'm cutting away that cargo net, and I'm done. I'm not going to do that anymore. And it's my radical, absolute commitment to myself to not go there anymore. And I did. And out of that has come a couple of amazing opportunities I never would have dreamed of, because that frequency you're holding of anger and fear and poor me and all of that kind of stuff, nothing can get in.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to create the unknown for a while. And, and also I think you're doing it for the greater good when you do that, because me being a villain just attracts more people who are, a victim keeps attracting more people who want to collude with me and say, you're right. Oh my gosh, poor you. Yeah, that happened to me too. And then that becomes that conversation. So I don't do that anymore. I won't participate in those conversations. So here we are in the crazy government stuff that's going on here, and I'm just not playing. I'm not participating in any of those conversations. So they don't serve me or anyone. So that's kind of a long answer, but I feel like that we have a tremendous power to affect the world around us with everything that we think and everything that we do. And, as being powerful as a woman or a man, anybody, you're affecting the collective. So it's another motivating factor for me.
I love it, Becky. I love it so much. Because lots of women who would listen to this podcast would go at some point or were going through a divorce. And sometimes it's hard, especially when you have children. You don't know,
Terrible.
Especially when you invest so much time and energy in helping your husband, or you stay-home mom, and like literally what to do, where to go, like where to start. I want to ask you this. What's some of the greatest blessing that came from this story for you?
My art is one, for sure. My relationship I have 3 kids, and my relationship with them is beautiful. And, it's newly recreated after my relationship, after my marriage was over, because there were so many rules and what they could and couldn't do and what we're supposed to eat and not eat and say and not say. And like, it was just, okay, we're starting over. We're starting over fresh. This is our new life. What we're making it up, and they were all adults by then. That's another thing. And, living the life that I lived before with so many people around, and so, and a lot of support, and a lot of, I needed to be be my own grown up, like I was in that one context. I handled it all, but then now I'm back in my personal life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hadn't put gas in my car for 11 years, 14 years, that kind of thing. It's like, that's kind of silly, but you know what I mean? I had to like recreate my life. Like, who am I? And out of that comes an amazing sense of like, what's my style? Like,
yeah.
What kind of, what do I want to have around me? Like, what's important to me? And I'm also, I thank God I started meditating and stuff years before that I even got involved in that, because that has helped me so much. And I do heart math now, which is a way of meditating that I really love. It's a way of connecting. It's called coherence, so that the EEG waves from your brain and the EKG waves in your heart are on the same frequency. So they're, it's not chaotic. And that's been beautiful for me to help me fall deep into meditation. And, it's just like having that kind of time to go inside and think and figure out who you are and make mistakes and clean them up and create new friendships, and who do you want around you, and what are you going to listen to and watch and not, and I'm a big believer in that, being careful what you pull into your space. It's like you're in my studio right now, which is a sacred space for me. I don't have very many people come in here, and I don't listen to news. I don't watch crazy stuff. I don't listen to music that could hijack me with the lyrics, like I'm really protective of where, of this space, so that it stays holy in here. So yeah, all those were things that I created, like starting all over, like being a beginner in life, and what do I want my life to be like? It's pretty powerful and scary. Yeah, and scary.
Becky, what would you do differently in your new coming relationship?
I think that my document, what it says in my document is that divine intelligence and pure love has already created my beloved, including the perfect timing of our union. And then I realized, wait a minute, I need to add a little bit more to that. That's pretty wide open, It's like, oh. So I changed it and I added that this relationship is filled with love and trust, joy and laughter, stimulation and generosity. And I sometimes change it up because when I'm doing my heart math meditation, I'm going through my document in my mind, and it just puts me in coherence every time I do that. But I look at that now and I see that my relationship will be a sacred relationship and not just, and I also know that I have more tools that I didn't have before, like you're talking about the fear thing, like the fear of being left, the fear of being lost, the fear of things going sideways. And, I'm a true believer now that if something's not meant to be, if something's tumultuous and got stuff going on, that's not for me. Like I'm not doing that now at this point in time in my life. What I do want, because I'd rather focus on that, is and fun, and humor. There's got to be that because it can get serious in life. So I'm feeling like it's gonna be that it's imminent. I haven't felt like that before, but I do feel like this is around the corner, I think. So
I feel it too. I also wrote a list of my ideal men. And I was very specific, Becky. I wrote back in August 2018, I wrote that he is bold, he's a New Zealander, he doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, he's very charismatic, he has an amazing sense of humor, he's very loyal, he is very honest. We have a mind-blowing sex twice a day, and we are creating our own empire together. Becky. And when I looked at this list, I thought, does this man even exist? To find a New Zealander who doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs is just impossible. But I had to believe. I had a choice, or to doubt it or believe in this. And when I looked at this list, I looked at myself and I saw myself totally depressed, overweight, unhappy, unfulfilled. And I decided I need to change because I'm not gonna attract this man being in this state. So our being is very important. And I literally turned all the attention from the outside to my inner world. 10 days later, Becky, he stopped me on the street. And when he stopped me, my whole being just knew it's him.
Wow.
It was like, divine kind of knowledge. It's him. We've been together for 6 years, and I believe in creation. I'm not a fan of manifestation or attraction. I believe that we create. And I want to ask you this question. This is for me mostly. How can you support your man, who is a man of a mission, going through challenges, and how to keep and remain this love and connection between you two?
You know what? That's a great question, and here's why. Because I think that I've just recently learned this about myself. Because after I answer this, I'll tell you what I did to get to this place. But my strengths that I realized that helped create that whole world were I'm good at systems and I'm good at relationships with people. And I think the warning is that when you're in the same business with your beloved, whatever, is for you to retain your ability to be your feminine power and not get too masculine, because the doing it can be really masculine. And I think that I was the one had to make all the behind the scenes stuff work. He was the stage and I was everything else. That's what he told me was my job, and I said okay to that. And I think that was hard. It was hard because I had so many responsibilities all the time, and was he was a driven man, and not, not easy. And so I think that the solution to that is to retain to retain your magnificent femininity and the power in our feminine intuition, because we have that. And I think that we have to stay in touch with that intuition that we have. And that comes from the inside, for you to be able to hear what is coming through. And
divine download.
100%, but also to give yourself space and time for your own evolution, because otherwise you could just swallow it up in their thing, whoever that is, whatever that is, and rather than just staying like, hold on a minute, this is what I need. I need to meditate. I need to exercise, like whatever that is. I live by the ocean. I need to walk on that beach. These are the things I need to do, and what's important to me. And another thing is that I realized that one of the things that I had done in my relationships with him and others since then is create like the story of, like women are we want to create the story of someone, and then we make them up in our mind to be like this, like women do. Like you go to a concert and women want to be with the guy on stage, right? Women want to be with the, right? You want that, but you're demeaning yourself because you're, why would you think that you're less than that? That you need to throw yourself at someone, or you create a story of them that's bigger and better than who they even are, so that you can remind yourself, oh, he picked me. I used to do that. It's crazy for you to even ask me these questions, because it's coming up with me like, wow, that was crazy that I even did that. Everybody would look at me in the back of the room and be like, that he picked me. It's like, well, that's not so great. That's not so great. You pick you.
Yeah.
You pick. Yeah. And I also think that you staying in your feminine energy and your feminine power like that is a relief for a guy to be with you then, because he's not coming back to another one of himself. Like I was trying to do everything for him to make sure that there's nothing that he didn't, left undone, or not, and like that he had the most support, and like, but what about me? And I think that's what, like the story of the tiger cage, like what about Becky, like obviously I was disposable, and I created that very scenario, like co-created, and I know that all things worked for good, and I'm thrilled that I have my life now. But I do believe that, you got to keep yourself a little separate from, the big picture. And then the last part of your question, or another part, was like, how do you support him? I think supporting him, or a man in your, or whatever your scenario is, I think is, like really I think the document thing is so cool, because you really get to know somebody and what's important to them. I mean, I think that, I wouldn't want to be with someone again who wouldn't be willing to go have someone, not me, but someone help them create a really powerful document. And then I know who they are. And then I know what's important to them, instead of me doing what I think is important. Like I know what their important things are. So it's so easy to extrapolate what I think is important onto someone else. And then I think like they should be, it's inaccurate because it's my stuff, not their stuff. I just thought of that. That would be really powerful to be able to know what someone, like what makes them tick, and support them in that.
Mm-hmm. As you were talking about all these things, Becky, I had a goosebumps. Literally had a goosebumps, because you're literally telling what is happening in our relationship. Sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes I lose myself in this relationship and in the whole thing. Just supporting Laban.
Yep.
Due to my nature and my culture, I still stepping back into my feminine energy and just trying to relax and trying to do what I love, like podcasting with such an amazing people like you. This is something that's mine. And I'm not identifying myself as a Laban's wife. I am identifying myself as Anna Ditchper. So it was a really great reminder. But I didn't come to this point straight away. I was losing myself big time.
Well, don't we do that when we're in love, or in the beginning of a relationship and we want it to work and we're doing, putting ourselves, doing all those things, which I think is a beautiful thing. But I also, um, I met a guy who I am not in a relationship with, but we went to a concert together with some other people. And I actually told him, I think I was reminding myself. So I told him, I said, you know what? I was talking about the story of, that whole thing, like because he's got his own fame for some reason. And I just want to make sure, that I stay in my lane, that I'm not demeaning myself in any way by thinking someone's like, oh my God, how amazing that would be. Or that person has, I don't know. Why do we do that? Because that really isn't, I mean, if someone was trying to describe me, but they were saying like, oh, she's her, I mean, you could describe me, but not really get to the heart of who I am. Like I want to know the heart of somebody. Like, I don't care what they've done in their lives, that I want to know the deep parts. If somebody doesn't want to go deep, then I'm not the girl. Because I'll go deep,
Exactly. Becky, and now you are creating a new TV show, The Art of Art. Could you tell us a little bit more? What is it all about?
Well, I'm going to tell you how it came to me because that's so special. Is that I was in a conversation with Ben Buckley in India. I love him. And we were talking about desire, about what do you desire? What is your passion and what do you desire? And don't answer that. Just as what he said to me. I want you to just sit with it for a few days. Just sit with it and don't try and figure it out. So I was doing the meditation I talk about. And after doing heart math for 20 minutes or something like that, where you're breathing as if your heart's doing the breathing and you're like deep in a heart space and deep breath in, like, into the count of 8, now to the count of 10, and you're just like only in your heart. And I have a written part of my document in front of me so that I can just like glance at it. And then I take a phrase at a time. And then when I get through all of my document and really feeling it, and there's an app on your phone that so you can see if it's working, if you're in coherence or not. And then after that, you can drop into a deep meditation, which is one of the reasons I love it, that wonderful feeling that you just fall into. And while that happened, an idea came into my head that was just like I wasn't even doing the talking. It was here's how it came. It's remember a show long ago on television, most people don't even remember, called Inside the Actor Studio with James Lipton. And I was like, do you remember that? And then the next thing that said was, do that with creators. That's exactly, I swear, how it came to me. So I started thinking about that, like how amazing, like to start interviewing people who are creators, like people who are like in all different aspects of life, like the cobbler who makes shoes that Elton John will only wear his shoes when he goes on stage. Interview the cobbler. Like how does that even happen? Because my daughter is an actor, and one of her improv teachers was talking about you have to dare to suck at something before you're good at it, because you're going to suck at something. Like I sucked at doing art before I got good at it. Now I've got 100,000 hours into it. So, but if like Steve Hardison said to me, and he did, like, I want you to like try and do some other kind of art, like just get some brushes and do that. I'm like, Steve, my brushes have like 3 hairs in them. There's so much detail. I would be terrible at it, right? So anybody who's a creator that's going to take time, like if you're learning to play the guitar, your fingers are going to hurt for a long time until you can finally memorize enough to let it gives you joy to do that. And then the people that have done that and gotten there, then once you get to that point where you're really good at whatever it is that you're making or doing or singing or dancing or whatever it is, then you got to figure out how you're going to get it out to the world, because that's the other hard part, because the world just doesn't get, we are wearing things, using things, everything that we're sitting here looking at came from nothing and made it into something by someone. So they were able to somehow after they figured out how to get good at it, get it out into the world. So my goal, and that's what the show is about showing the public like a magnificently shot show. I've got an amazing cinematographer who we're working with who's shooting the most beautiful things about what's happening. Like, how is a piano made? You know, like some amazing virtuoso on the piano. Actually, he's in my show, you know, but he's never even seen how a piano is made. Like, if you do even know like what it takes to do one and make these things. And so the show is going to be amazing. And I was telling Steve about it when I was sitting in front of him, and he said, "May I borrow your journal?" Which is like, I have this journal sitting here. And I said, "Sure." And so he opens it to a page and he takes a pen and he writes "The Art of Art." So he named the show. That's how the show came to be. So we're in the process right now of finishing up a whole season. We're going to do that, and then we'll pitch it to big networks and whatever. So I'm excited about it.
Perfect. Stay tuned, guys.
Yeah, it'll be fabulous.
I cannot wait to watch this. Becky, for people who would love to follow you, where can they find you?
Well, I have a website, just Becky Robbins is my art website. And then I'm mentoring people. So I'm working on that, which is Becky Robbins Connected. And they can just find me on Facebook, social media, you know, Instagram, you know, email. My email is Becky Robbins with the number 1 at Gmail. I'm pretty easy to find out in the world.
Perfect. And I would highly recommend to go and check out Becky's website. It's literally, it's not a website, it's an art. It's beautiful. And check your YouTube channel as well. I was binging on your videos, Becky, how you just sit down and record the videos about your paintings and just about your thoughts. I've noticed you stopped doing them. And have you seen some comments? Becky, please continue. Becky, please the new video.
I know I need 3 of me. I'm squeezing in time for little things, but I love that. And I want to continue to do that. And I want to do it in connection with mentoring too, or coaching, however we say it, because I think that just like even a short little encouragement of some, like, here's my thought, they're just not something that's a regular, but this thought just came to me, and just like turn on your camera and do it and share it with people, because I think that we are, you know, I have a neon sign behind me that you can't really see because I'm sitting below it, but it says we belong to one another, and we do belong to one another. And I think about that every day. When I'm in my studio, I turn that on and turn it off when I walk out of here, because it's like a reminder of how valuable we are to one another. And yeah, so thank you for encouraging me. I'll keep doing those.
Becky, before we go, do you have any concluding thoughts?
Yeah, I do. Based on all the stuff that you've asked me and that we've talked about, it's really interesting. I think I'd written down, and especially reading like this book of mastery, which is so powerful, is that I had written down in the margins about feeling incapable, like my fear of not being capable. And I mentioned my birthday was last week, and I took a long walk on the beach, and I thought, you know, just came to me as things do, to just do like a little review by decade, right? And so I started like thinking about like, okay, from 0 to 10, pretty great, life was okay. 10 to 20, like, oh my God, like 10 to 20, like my mother left our family I was 11 to 15. She just took off and was gone. So I kind of raised myself, and I did raise myself. And so I didn't really have any of that kind of supervision. But then 10 to 20, like, so all that happened. And then I got married early, had a child at the age of 19. Like, whoa, so much happened in that decade. And then I went to the next decade after that, and I was looking at that. And there's like good stuff, not such great stuff. I got to where I am right now in my life, and what came to me, as I mentioned earlier, is that I'm like, oh my gosh, Becky, you're like, I was thinking, how did I even? People have said, how did you create that empire? Can you do it for me? And I thought, like, well, how did I do that? And it occurred to me that, well, I'm good at systems and good at relationships, but you know what? There was never a spot in all the years of my life that some cataclysmic event happened that caused me to believe that I was incapable. It came by, I don't know, how did that get in my head? Like, it just got in my head some strange way. It's like silly. Of course I'm capable. My gosh, you know. So I love that, you know, doing those kinds of beautiful, kind, loving introspection sometimes can reveal something that is just so beautiful that, I was in tears on the beach. I could even right now just be emotional thinking about how could I have ever not believed that I was capable of so much, and I have so much left to do in my lifetime that I'm committed to and want to. And like, I want to write a book, the television show. I'm doing another thing with a big laser project that I want to get out into the world, and my art and all of that. So I think we have to believe in ourselves and just do stuff until we can know who we are. And then if you still doubt yourself, go talk to somebody, go talk to somebody. I mean, that was, you asked again about supporting your man. It's like, I was always telling Tony, like reminding him of his greatness. He would be tired and exhausted, and I would remind him of his greatness and specific things that happened. And remember when you did that today? That was so amazing. And so that was, but we should do that for one another. So I'm really grateful that you asked me to be here, and it's an honor for me to talk to you, Anna, because I watched you from a distance before I ever met you.
Becky, thank you so much for being so open and so vulnerable and so honest with me today. I appreciate you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Becky Robbins.